welcome to another Coffee with Kilroy, or what I sometimes call Beverage in a Book. My beverage, well, I think by the title you know what that is. My morning cup of coffee. Now, this might not be your morning, might be your afternoon, might even be your evening. So thank you for stopping by no matter what time of day it is where you are at. Today, I'm taking a look at Playing at the World by John Peterson. This endeavors to be a history of simulating wars, people, and fantastic adventures from chess to role-playing games. So this is quite a large undertaking by Mr. Peterson, and it covers kind of the history of wargaming in some aspects, but really goes a lot into role-playing as well. And if you know the history of modern wargaming, a lot of it drew a lot from modern role-playing games. Gary Gygax, with his inventions of Dungeons and Dragons, originally started off kind of as a medieval war game for miniatures that kind of grew into a role-playing game. So this really kind of bridges wargaming and role-playing. I covered earlier I covered a book called Zones of Control, which really just focuses on wargaming. And I'll put a link to this in this video as well if you want to go back and take a look at that. I just kind of did a Coffee with Kilroy and just did a quick thumb through to see what was in here. But this is perspectives on wargaming. So this has some of the history of wargaming, but also goes into, has essays and pieces on aspects of wargaming, as far as strategy and mechanics and those kind of things as well. Whereas this really is talking about kind of the history of simulating wars and people. So this is not only covering wargaming, but really going into role-playing games. So in that regard, it's kind of getting into a little bit of what this book has. I haven't covered this one yet, but I'll probably, there's several, I don't know about several, there's a few, what's the difference between a few and a several? Books out there on the creation of role-playing and the more of a review or historical piece on role-playing and the birth of role-playing, and in this case this is based on Dungeons and Dragons, which is one of the earliest, if not the most famous in this genre. So this really just focuses on role-playing, whereas this book here is focusing on both. It's kind of doing the history of simulating, so it's taking wargaming and role-playing in that regard. So let's do a little bit of a page turn. This is a relatively dense book, meaning that there's not a lot of pictures. I like pictures, and there's not a lot in here. There's a few images, but there's a lot of text in this book, and it's a relatively, as you can see, relatively thick book here. Let's see how many pages we have here. So with the index or the glossary, or whatever you want to call it, 698 pages. So you definitely are getting your money's worth by getting this book here. So I thought I'd probably go through the contents, because that is the book itself, as I said, is pretty densely packed with text. So not a lot of you do not want me reading to you. Although every once in a while I'll read from Tales of War, but then try to go into a war game. So, but I digress. So as you see here, Chapter 1, Prelude to Adventure, 1964 to 1974. So now we're getting into the rise of wargaming clubs, miniature wargaming, medieval setting, castle and crusade societies. So we're getting into, as I said, some of those seeds of where D&D came from, which came from kind of wargaming miniatures. And so this is going into quite a bit of that. I haven't gone through this book yet, but I imagine there's probably some overlap with this book, I would imagine, but I could be wrong. If any of you have read any of these books or have other recommendations, feel free to drop those in the comments at any time. Then you have Chapter 2, the medieval fantasy genre. So this is evolution of fantasy. Fantasy is popular adventure fiction. So, we're getting into, I would imagine and it's been a while since I've read through this book, and I haven't gone through every single chapter. I've really focused more on the wargaming chapters, but, you get a lot of the influence of, Lord of the Rings, and that on fantasy is very prevalent. War and its opponents, influence of Tolkien. There you go, right there. There's that influence of Tolkien right there. Let's go up a little bit here. On Dungeons and on Dragons. Here we go. Fantasy people and creatures, classes. We're talking about here. So this is really, if you're interested in, the development of role-playing games, or specifically, kind of fantasy-based, this is a good resource to get some of that background history there. Let's go down over here. So chapter 3 is the rules of the game. So now we're getting into war games. So this is the chapter that really goes into, the history of war games. So games before 1780, the Brunswick gamers from 1780 to 1811, Reiswitz, father and son, 1811 to 1824, Kriegspiel, Vogue, 1824 to 1881, toy soldiery, 1881 to 1914. In the 1914 period where you're starting to get into wargaming and the world wars. So in this period, you get H.G. Wells, codifying his Little Wars, miniature wargaming, and actually I think some of those rules might have been based on him playing miniatures with Robert Louis Stevenson. Although I don't think Stevenson ever codified his rules. I think it was H.G. Wells that did that. But, two well-known authors, but also were miniature gamers, or at least budding miniature gamers at that point. This is early on in the hobby at that point. System in Dungeons and Dragons. Then we get to Chapter 4, Roles and Immersion. Coalitions at Rand and in diplomacy. Now you're at Rand. Rand is more of a think tank, and so you're getting into probably some professional wargaming. And I really should do a piece at some point about the differences between hobby and professional. And there are people out there that are content providers that do professional wargaming, and so probably can speak more to it and better at it than I can. I'm thinking of Brandt and Mark Herman and other people out there have done quite a bit of professional wargaming. All right. From Let's Pretend to Coventry, personalities by post. Running out of space here. So now we're getting into some themes and settings. So this is roles and immersion. So you're getting into some Hyboria and the campaign as story, the Midgard phenomena, characters and role playing. So you're getting into some of the background of role playing, some of the settings, so to speak. Chapter 5, the dawn of role playing, 1974 to 1977. Sorry, it's at the very bottom here. I'm trying to get close in so you can actually see some of the words on the page here. So then we're into more on the role playing aspect. So again, this is heavy on the role playing, because this is focusing on simulating wars. It does cover wargaming. There's whole sections in here, but that's kind of sandwiched in between quite a bit of role playing. Here's some of the figures that are in here. As I said, there wasn't very many pictures, but there's 68. But again, not as many as I need a pop-up book, right? So the rest of it is just the book here. So I thought I would show some of, there's the Dungeons and Dragons first edition, if you have that in your collection. I do not. If you have that in your collection, though, you probably worth a pretty penny. Here is Tactics, Charles S. Roberts' design. This is Tactics 1, which is kind of the father of modern board wargaming. So there is quite a bit of wargaming information in here and the history, but again, it's really put in the context of role playing, and with that is kind of the overarching theme in this is how do we immerse ourselves in simulations in more of a role-playing sense. At least that's my takeaway from this. But I've read some of the wargaming sections, really good history there, and good references. So and there's some of that in Zones of Control as well. Some of the, but both of these, it's a little bit more reduced because it's not the sole focused of the game, is not the history of wargaming. But anyway, so if this interests you, I mean, if the history of wargaming, but more specifically the history of role playing and how those two intersect, and interest you, then this is probably the perfect book for you to get yourself into, or to pick up and sink your eyes into it. How about that, man? I need more coffee. I'm butchering my my metaphors. Anyway, or is that simile? Anyway, there is Playing at the World, a history of simulating wars, people, and fantastic adventures from chess to role-playing games. And he does go out in the history. He goes back into the chess and some of the more abstract war games, I use quotes there, of history, and as they kind of grow into chess, grow into board war gaming. Not a whole lot. The book, again, the book, that's not the focus of this book. But anyway, if any of you have read this, love to know your thoughts on it, comments, share them along with everyone else. Again, I highly recommend Zones of Control if you're really wanting to dive into some more esoteric topics of wargaming, perspectives on wargaming. This is a good one to get into. And yeah, I've yet to get into this one yet. I need to sink my teeth into this. And there's a couple, at least a couple. I went from several to a few to a couple. I don't know how many books are out there on the history of role playing, especially focused on Dungeons and Dragons. But I know there's at least a few, couple, and I have that one. I just need to get into that one. If you any comments on any of those or recommendations is fine as well. Anyway, that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for stopping by. You have a lot of choices. You have limited time and a lot of choices, and in the fact that you've chose to spend some time with me is greatly appreciated. Thanks all, and have a good morning, noon, or night, or evening. Take care. Thanks for watching.